Nobody thought it would happen this soon, but Stephanie White just made a move that could change the entire future of the Indiana Fever. Forget everything you thought you knew about this team because the offense isn't being built around Caitlin Clark anymore. It's now the Kelsey Mitchell show, and the decision has the WNBA world in shock. Stephanie White didn't come back to the Indiana Fever to keep things safe. She came to flip the script entirely. Since her return as head coach late in 2024, she's been on a mission to rip out the old playbook, re-engineer the team's identity, and turn a struggling franchise into a contender. White isn't just tweaking lineups or making cosmetic changes, she's been tearing down the entire framework of how the Fever operate and then rebuilding it from the ground up. When she took the reins, she made it clear. This team wasn't going to be defined by one player, no matter how big their name was. That's a dangerous stance in a league where star power sells tickets and drives headlines. But White's approach has been relentless. Every decision has been about crafting a system that works, not one that just feeds a single superstar. Her first order of business was reshaping the roster into something far more dangerous than the Fever had in years. She didn't settle for a slow, multi-season rebuild. Instead, she went out and brought in proven, battle-tested veterans players like Dewana Bonner, Natasha Howard, and Sophie Cunningham. Each of them brought toughness, playoff experience, and a mindset built for winning now. These were the kinds of acquisitions that signaled to the league that the Fever weren't just hoping for a turnaround, they were demanding it. And in the middle of all these changes, one dynamic quickly emerged. Stephanie White wasn't quietly waiting for Caitlin Clark to grow into her role as the face of the franchise. Instead, she began empowering another leader, one who had been quietly carrying the Fever through its hardest years. That player? Kelsey Mitchell. Mitchell had already been a consistent scorer, one of the most reliable offensive weapons in the WNBA, even before Clark arrived. But under White's leadership, her role expanded almost overnight. The offense started running through her more often. The ball found her hands in crunch time, and the plays seemed designed to unleash her shot-making ability rather than just to showcase the league's most hyped rookie. For longtime Fever fans, this was a bold but not entirely surprising move. Mitchell had earned her stripes during the lean years when the Fever were scraping for wins and attention. She wasn't just a role player filling in gaps, she was the heartbeat of the team. Now, Stephanie White was giving her the platform to lead outright, but the timing of all this? That's what made it explosive. Because Caitlin Clark, the generational talent who had brought national attention and record-breaking television ratings to the WNBA, was still in just her second pro season. No one expected her to be sidelined in the team's identity shift so quickly, especially not by the very coach who was supposed to unlock her full potential. Yet here we are. And what's even more intriguing is that Stephanie White isn't apologizing for it. She's leaning into it. But as it turns out, this bold shift wasn't just about strategy, it was also about something far more unexpected. Caitlin Clark's rookie season was supposed to be a fairy tale highlight reel passes, logo range threes, and a rising star carrying the Indiana Fever into the next era. But instead, her first 2 seasons have been overshadowed by a frustrating and unpredictable battle with injuries. It all started with what seemed like a minor issue tightness in her quad and groin early in the season. At first, the team downplayed it. White described it as manageable and nothing serious. The plan was to ease her workload, keep her fresh, and avoid pushing too hard too soon. But in professional sports, minor injuries have a way of lingering when the body doesn't fully heal, especially under the relentless grind of a WNBA schedule. Clark tried to play through the discomfort, but the explosion in her first step just wasn't there. The quick changes of direction that made her so dangerous in college suddenly became harder. Her deep-range shooting, which relies heavily on strong lower body mechanics, looked forced, inconsistent. Then came the inevitable: she sat out a game, then 2, then a week. The narrative shifted from precautionary rest to ongoing evaluation. Fans kept asking the same questions online. Is she really hurt, or is there something else going on between Clark and the coaching staff? By mid-season, the Fever's tone changed. No more vague updates. Stephanie White confirmed that Clark's situation was now a long-term concern. She would be evaluated week-wide with no clear timetable for a return. That was a shock to the fan base. The WNBA's most hyped player was suddenly gone. Not traded, not benched for poor play, just sidelined indefinitely. And for White, this was the turning point. She couldn't afford to let the season hang in limbo, waiting for Clark to recover. The Fever had momentum to protect, a locker room to keep unified, and a fan base that had finally started believing again. She needed a leader on the floor right now, not in 3 weeks, not in 2 months. That's when she fully shifted the team's offensive center of gravity to Kelsey Mitchell. Clark's absence gave Mitchell the chance to not just lead in scoring, but to control the tempo, dictate possessions, and set the tone for the team's style of play. And with each passing game, it became clearer. Mitchell wasn't just filling in for Clark. She was thriving. This wasn't just a stopgap. This was a changing of the guard in real time. But if there was any doubt about who the Fever belonged to now, Kelsey Mitchell's next performances would make it crystal clear. But if there was any doubt about who the Fever belonged to now, Kelsey Mitchell's next performances would make it crystal clear. The moment Caitlin Clark went down, Kelsey Mitchell didn't just step up, she exploded. Game after game, she delivered the kind of performances that make a franchise rethink its entire hierarchy. Her scoring wasn't just good, it was electrifying. She dropped 35 points on the Chicago Sky in a game that had Fever fans roaring in disbelief. She hit clutch threes when the game was hanging by a thread. She attacked the rim with fearlessness, drawing fouls, making defenders look helpless. Mitchell didn't just take Clark's spot on the court, she took over the team's personality. The Fever began to play with her swagger. They moved faster in transition, pushed the pace, and trusted her instincts in crunch time. Where Clark's style was calculated and precise, Mitchell's game was explosive and unpredictable. And the fans? They couldn't get enough. Social media lit up after every game. Clips of Mitchell's step-back jumpers and cold-blooded threes were trending, with captions like, "This is Kelsey's team now," and "Mitchell for MVP." Even national sports media started shifting the narrative. The conversation went from, "When will Clark return?" to, "Is Mitchell actually the Fever's best player?" But this wasn't just about a hot scoring streak. Mitchell's leadership was starting to transform the locker room. She became the voice in huddles, the one who slapped teammates on the back after a big defensive stop, the one who barked instructions when the game got tense. For years, she had been a quiet star playing for a team with no national spotlight. Now, with Clark sidelined, Mitchell was finally the headline act, and she was making the most of every second. Stephanie White noticed it too. Her play calls leaned heavily toward Mitchell in the closing minutes. The sets were designed to get Mitchell the ball in her sweet spots, top of the key, elbow, or coming off a staggered screen. This wasn't an accident. White was building the offense around her, piece by piece, but not everyone was thrilled about that. In fact, what happened next would ignite one of the most heated fan debates in WNBA history. It started small, a few grumbles on Fever fan forums, a couple of comments under highlight reels asking, "So, what happens to Caitlin now?" But within days, it exploded across social media. On Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere the WNBA conversation lived, the discourse was fierce and unrelenting. On one side, there were the Caitlin loyalists, the D-Hard fans who had followed her since Iowa, who believed she wasn't just the future of the Fever but the savior of the league. To them, sidelining Clark as the team's focal point felt like sacrilege. They accused Stephanie White of mismanaging the most hyped rookie in women's basketball history, even suggesting there might be a hidden agenda at play. Some claimed Clark's injury wasn't being handled properly. Others speculated without evidence that there was a personal rift between her and the coaching staff. On the other side were the Mitchell Defenders fans who had been there through the darkest years of the Fever rebuild, who had watched Kelsey carry the team night after night while the national media barely noticed. To them, Mitchell's rise wasn't just deserved, it was overdue. They saw Stephanie White's decision not as a betrayal of Clark, but as a long-awaited recognition of Mitchell's greatness. The arguments got ugly fast. On Fever Reddit threads, fans went back and forth for hundreds of comments, dissecting every press conference, every game clip, every facial expression between Clark and her teammates. Sports talk shows picked up the story, and suddenly the Indiana Fever weren't just a basketball team, they were a soap opera. And this wasn't just a fan-eye-driven drama. It started bleeding into the locker room. Players tried to downplay it in interviews, saying the team was united and focused on winning, but the media could sense the tension. A sideline camera even caught a moment during a timeout where Clark appeared disengaged, staring down at the floor while Mitchell and White huddled with the rest of the team. Stephanie White didn't back down. In fact, she doubled down. In one post-game interview, she was asked directly if Clark would be reinserted as the offensive centerpiece once she returned. Her answer was blunt. "We're going to keep doing what's working. Right now, that's Kelsey." That line ricocheted through the WNBA world like a cannon shot. For Mitchell supporters, it was a badge of honor. For Clark's diehards, it was proof she was being iced out. But here's the twist. Stephanie White's decision wasn't just a random coaching gamble. It was rooted in a philosophy she had been quietly crafting for years. And once you understand that philosophy, you'll see why this move might actually define her legacy as a coach. And once you understand that philosophy, you'll see why this move might actually define her legacy as a coach. Stephanie White has never been the kind of coach to bow to public pressure. Her career has been built on defying expectations and making the hard choices that other coaches avoid. From her early coaching days at Vanderbilt to her stint in the WNBA with the Fever and later the Connecticut Sun, she's developed a reputation for one thing: building teams that can win in the postseason. And she knows something casual. Fans often forget star power can bring in ratings. But championships are won by chemistry, balance, and adaptability. In her mind, catering too heavily to one player, no matter how talented, is a gamble that rarely pays off long-term. She's seen it happen. Teams that orbit around a single superstar often become predictable. Defenses adapt, the offense stagnates, and the rest of the roster becomes passive. That's why White's return to the Fever wasn't just about saving the franchise. It was about creating a culture where anyone could be the hero on any given night. And if that meant challenging the league's golden girl in the process, so be it. To understand why she's backing Kelsey Mitchell now, you have to look at how White views leadership. She believes leaders aren't appointed by media, hype, or marketing deals. They emerge in the heat of competition. They're the ones whose presence elevates the entire team, who play with a mix of grit and fearlessness that inspires everyone around them. And right now, in her eyes, that leader is Kelsey Mitchell. White has also been playing the long game. She knows Clark is still developing, still adjusting to the speed, size, and physicality of the pro game. She doesn't want to burn her out by putting the entire weight of the franchise on her shoulders too soon. Instead, she's letting her grow in a system where she doesn't have to be the savior every night. By empowering Mitchell, White is buying Clark the time and space to evolve without the crushing pressure that often breaks young stars. There's another layer to this too. White's coaching tree and mentors have all taught her the same core truth: your system should outlast any one player. By making Mitchell the focal point now, she's proving to her roster and to the rest of the league that the Fever can win with or without Clark at full strength. That's not just strategy, that's insurance. And so far, the results speak for themselves. The Fever's ball movement has improved, their offense is less predictable, opposing defenses can't just key in on one scorer, and Mitchell's confidence, it's sky high. But while White's plan might be working on the court, it's also building up massive pressure off the court. The closer Caitlin Clark gets to returning, the more the spotlight will burn on White's decision. Because when Clark finally steps back onto that floor, the entire WNBA will be watching to see, will this still be Kelsey Mitchell's team, or will the balance of power shift again? Because when Clark finally steps back onto that floor, the entire WNBA will be watching to see, will this still be Kelsey Mitchell's team, or will the balance of power shift again? Caitlin Clark's return is shaping up to be one of the most anticipated moments in recent WNBA history. Weeks of speculation have only intensified the drama. Every time Fever practice footage leaks, fans slow it down frame by frame, trying to gauge if she's moving at full speed again. Every media update, no matter how vague, sends social media into a frenzy. But this isn't just about her being healthy enough to play. This is about the power dynamic inside the Fever locker room. Before her injury, Clark was marketed as the centerpiece of the franchise, the rookie phenom meant to carry Indiana into a new era. Now, she's stepping back into a system that's been redesigned without her, led by a veteran who's playing the best basketball of her career. And make no mistake, Mitchell isn't going to step aside quietly. She's earned this moment. Her numbers, her leadership, and her ability to close games have made her not just a star, but the star of the Fever. If White keeps running the offense through Mitchell, Clark will have to adjust to being the secondary option, something she hasn't experienced since high school. The media is already framing it as a brewing rivalry, even if both players publicly insist there's no issue. But anyone who's followed sports long enough knows that situations like this rarely stay clean. There's always the risk of subtle tension, missed passes, frustrated glances, or differences in play style that can disrupt the flow of the game. And when the cameras are on, those little moments become magnified. If Clark returns and the Fever keep winning under Mitchell's lead, White's gamble will look like genius. But if Clark struggles to adapt, or if the team's chemistry suffers, the backlash will be brutal. Critics will question whether White mishandled her most valuable young asset. Fans will take sides more aggressively. The headlines will get sharper, the debates louder, and the Fever's front office, they'll be watching just as closely. Because this isn't just about this season, it's about shaping the identity of the franchise for the next decade. One thing is certain, the moment Caitlin Clark steps back onto that court, this won't just be another game. It will be the opening act of the Fever's defining storyline. This isn't just about one season, it's about the Fever's entire future. If Mitchell keeps the reins and the team thrives, Indiana could build a contender around her leadership and veteran stability. But if Clark reclaims the spotlight and delivers on her hype, she becomes the face of the franchise for the next decade. Stephanie White's decision now will set the tone for years, either as the coach who trusted her proven star or the one who risked alienating the league's most marketable rookie. And in the high-stakes world of pro basketball, those choices are remembered forever. The next few games won't just decide who leads the Fever, they'll decide what this team will look like for the rest of the 2022. The Indiana Fever are standing at a crossroads. On one path, Kelsey Mitchell, the battle-tested veteran who's finally getting her moment in the Sunday. On the other, Caitlin Clark, the generational rookie whose star power could define women's basketball for a decade. And at the center of it all, Stephanie White, the coach, willing to gamble her reputation on the belief that this team's future doesn't have to revolve around one player. The question isn't just who's better, it's whose team will this be? One thing's certain when history looks back on this era of the Fever, this power shift will be the moment everything changed. And whether you're Team Kelsey or Team Caitlin, the drama is only just getting started.